It's the test video, part 2. In this video, I'm going to go ahead and go over what I did for my peaks, why I did what I did, and what I recommend for most raw powerlifters or anyone really wanting to test their 1 rep maxes. There's a ton of information out there, as always on the internet, too much information, and so I hope this will give some of you insight as to what might be the best route in order to peak. Okay, so for me, anytime I test, it's not just a normal test. I would say like most athletes that have had a pretty smooth sail going into their peak week, or their test week, test days, testing their 1 rep maxes. It's just another test. For me, because of my situation with my back, I'm stoked about just being here and being able to walk and lift and just have a healthy life. So every time I get a personal best on any of my lifts, I'm always ecstatic, and I'm always stoked. Reason why I tested my 1 rep maxes this cycle is to give myself the percentages I was wanting to use going into my next block, leading into the November meet. I'm still possibly throwing around the idea of doing equipped, wearing a shirt, squat suit, knee wraps. Only reason I wouldn't do that is because business is starting to pick up and I'm slightly busier. So I don't necessarily have the time to be in the gym for 3.5, 4 hours. That being said, this test was successful in that I got a personal best on squat, personal best on bench press, and deadlift wasn't there. Like I said in my last video, I really didn't think deadlift would be there at all, just because I've just been kind of babying a hip flexor issue and a slight groin pull. But again, this cycle in general, I didn't really put a lot of emphasis on deadlift, so going into the next one, I will absolutely do that along with bench press. Stoked that I actually got a PR on bench. I'm really stoked about that because I didn't think that would really be there at all. But most ecstatic about squat. I think I could have actually done more than I did. I had some slight form breakdown in that my knee came in a little bit, but it happens. So, and again, it's just testing, so I didn't want to push it too hard. As far as the reason why, and after the video, I'll actually dig into my game plan, what it's going to look like for November. But I think it's really important for everyone to know that PR is a PR. You know, if it's 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 30 pounds, whatever it may be, especially lifting as long as I have. I'm not saying I've lifted a crazy amount of time, but even 5 pound PR is, I'm always going to be ecstatic about it. And then on bench, it was less than that. So just keep an eye on that. But I'm still very, very stoked. As far as what I did leading into this peak, like I mentioned in the last video, a lot of people, they tend to do their openers or decently heavy weight before they do a deload going into their test day a few weeks out from the meet. And unless you're doing equipped, I don't think that's a very good idea at all. Reason being is you're essentially taking your body and adapting it for working with really heavy loads. Example, 1 rep max, and then you're asking your body to turn around and uh, deload for a few weeks and then asking it to lift heavy weight again. Um, an example is like squat. I can't tell you how many times I've heard where you have someone, there's a girl at a couple of gyms ago that her coach had her do her max effort. I think it was like 2.5 weeks prior to doing the meet. Um, by the time the meet came around, she got under the bar to do her first attempt, and she bombed. And prior to 2 weeks ago, it moved, really easy. I would say she had like 2 reps left in the tank, and then she got to the meet, and it was a disaster. So what I like to do, and like what I like to have my athletes do, is when going into peak week, to still get under a heavy load, so you're still getting that stimulus. Your central nervous system is still having a decent amount of impact on it, so that it's primed and ready. Because essentially, that's all you're trying to do is just prime yourself for that peak. You're trying to get the most out of your body and your program as possible at the test day or the powerlifting meet or whatever. So again, for myself, I did, and you'll see in the video, I did the 2 sets or 2 singles at 345 on squat, 2 singles on bench at 215, and then on deadlift it was 365, which is funny. You'll see in the test day how that worked out. But again, it got my body ready. I was walking out for my first attempt, my first squat under a heavier load. And instead of 245, I went 250. It moved really easy. Felt really light, felt real confident, and that's another thing is confidence going into your test day. You want to go into your test day knowing that you're going to be able to do your job. You're going to be able to, you worked really hard. You don't want to go in there nervous, especially for something that's, an RPE 8, something you can knock out for 3 reps. It should never be the case that you're nervous about that. Unless you're going into a meet and it's, your first meet, or you're just so jacked and you're so amped up. But that's another thing entirely. So going through this whole cycle, or this whole block, I was squatting 3, sometimes 4 times a week. I think the most reps I ever did in this block were, I think 8 reps. And then I cut it down, and the least I did was a couple of doubles, and then my singles. Each week for about 6 weeks, I worked up to heavy singles. That was great because that gave me an idea as to where I was strength-wise through the whole block. So I knew that 345 wouldn't be a big deal. I worked up to 365 most weekends on squat. So yeah, again, enjoy the video. All right, so as I mentioned before, deadlifts didn't go so well. I've been nursing a hip flexor and groin tweak, so I've been just taking it really easy, and my volume's been really low on deadlifts, but it's actually feeling a little better. So after this week's deload, going into the start of the block, I think I'll be ready to ramp it back up. So that along with bench press, because again, this last block was a lot more emphasis on squat, and yeah. So here are my quote unquote openers. That was deadlifts 365 for 2 singles. Here I'm just working up to my singles on squat. This is 325 for a single, and I was basically just looking for about
an RPE of 8, couple reps left in the tank, something I can do easily for possible triple. This was 345. I did for 2 singles. And going into this week, I even felt my hip flexor and squat, or excuse me, my groin and squat, which is weird. Usually I don't have any, even when I felt it in my deadlift and tweaked it a little bit ago, I didn't really feel it in my squat at all. And of course, the week I'm testing, that's when I start feeling it. So did that, and then same thing for bench. I was looking for that 8. However, I kind of overshot a little bit and end up doing a little more than I should have. So this bench that I tested could have possibly gone a little better, which is good because again I PR'd and things could have been slightly on the upside. So this is where I should have stopped at 205 for a single. I should have done that for one more single, but I thought I had more in me and I didn't quite have it. So end up doing 215 for 2 more singles, and they moved decently well, but I think it might have ended up taxing me a little more for my test day. For me, that will range for for my clients, I'll range. For females, I'll usually have them do slightly more singles unless they're doing decent. As far as the volume, if they respond better to lower volume, I'll give them less singles. So this is the test day. Again, squat 325 for a single. Working up to just kind of going through the motions. This moved really well. So instead of going the 345 I did earlier in the week, I decided to go 350 for a single. Everything was nice and tight, felt good. This is probably where I'm going to be at going into my opener for the meet November. And like I said, in my training days for my singles, I worked up to 365, so I knew I had that in the tank easy. So this is 10 pounds less than my previous best. If you notice on racking, I clipped the pins, and that actually took a decent amount of air out of me. So knocked the wind. It was I've never had that happen, so it was interesting. But moved well. A lot faster than my previous 375 the last time I tested. Did 385 last time I tested. That was my best, and decided to go 395. This is 10-pound PR, so my buddy Tyler spotted me. So right here, you'll notice that my knee kind of caved in a little bit, and I really was considering going for 405 on this. That like if I did 405, I might have cried, but just because of the back and everything like that. But decided to stay with 395. Super happy about that. So even though 215 kind of kicked my butt in my openers during the beginning of the week, I decided to go with it anyways. 215 moved better than it did in the beginning of the week, so I was pretty happy about that. Jumped up 10 pounds to 225 for a single. My best ever was at a meet, and I did 232. So, and like I mentioned in the last video, bench, I didn't think I really would even possibly even do this, to be honest. Bench just wasn't moving super well, and I didn't really put a whole lot of into it as far as my volume. So really, with that being said, I am super stoked about this. This is 235 for a single, so I think that if I can get this, just doing a little more additional volume going into this next uh, block, and then training my sticking point, which you'll see is about 3/4 of the way up. I just slow down just a little bit. I think I can do slightly better. So, yep, there, and then boom. So, and then deadlifts. Woof. Buzz your girlfriend. I did 365, and usually I'll go 365, 385, 405, and then on up. And this day I went 365 and then 405, and I just didn't have it in the tank, especially with my hip flexor and groin. I immediately felt it when I went for the 405, so I decided to chill there.
Okay, so as you saw, I got a 10-pound PR on squat, 3-pound PR on bench press, and deadlift was meh. But again, going into these next 13 weeks, next week I'm going to take a slight deload, and then I'm flipping the switch. So what I do with myself and all my clients is I always run them through DUP, daily undulating periodization. So they're always going to be doing the lift multiple times a week, so that they're able to actually practice the lifts, get good and efficient at them. But the first 4 weeks are going to be a hypertrophy phase, just trying to get in some extra volume, building lean muscle mass. And then it's going to be the transition phase where I start, and during that phase, the hypertrophy phase, I'm going to be doing a lot more accessory work, just working on overall strength. So I'll be rocking more machines, more second and third, as far as accessory work goes. So it's going to be pretty much exercises that help strengthen the main compounds, and then I'll have the transition phase, the next 4 weeks, where I'll be kind of tightening up on some of my compound lifts, basically just trying to get better squat, bench, and deadlift. Really starting to move away from the accessory work, still keeping it in there, still trying to stay mobile and focus on maintaining strength everywhere. And then, but we're still chipping away at the reps. We're still up in the weight, and throughout the entire process, I'll be up in the weight, dropping the reps over the entire 12 weeks. So then going into the last 4 weeks, I'm really kicking the accessory work aside. Some of it will still be in there, like a quarter to half, but nowhere near the amount. And I'll be moving away from exercises like pin press on bench press, pause squats, even high bar squats, just random movements, and really starting to focus on low bar, getting away from conventional deadlift, focusing on sumo. So yeah, just going to be overall focusing and transitioning into full competition lifts. No more touch and go on bench press, all going to be pause bench press. As far as, and that's another thing too, the first 4 to 6 weeks are going to be doing a lot of movements, like, again, a lot of pin presses, a lot of even working with slingshot, just basically trying to, looking at where I was when I tested, finding where those breakdowns were, where I slowed down in the movement, or maybe I lost tightness here and there, and really training that specific weakness, so that going into November, I'm ready. I don't have, I have less of a chance of having those breakdowns in my my reps, exercises. So I'll take you guys with me as I go through and do it. If I do decide to do equipped, then that's going to be really fun because I do know about it. I know what to do, but it's still something very new to me. So you guys will get to see the kinks in my armor when it comes to that. So, and we'll see if my back can even hold up. Getting under, hopefully an additional 50 to 60 pounds on my squat for my back, where as far as like perfectly healthy back, that's not that much more weight. However, with mine, we'll see if the hardware, because the hardware is literally right where the bar goes. So we'll see. But that's it for this one. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment below or email me. See you later.